call this meeting to order at 6:34, February the 5th, 2024. We do have a quorum, so we turn it over to staff. Purpose of hearing.
Thank you, Chair. So for each item tonight, we'll have a call to order followed by the staff report. Afterwards, the applicant will make their presentation. Then we'll have public comments in support or opposition to the project. At that time, please state your name and address for the record. Be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame. Following that, commission and staff will have their discussion, and then the commission will vote to recommend approval as presented, approval with conditions, denial of the request, or to table the item. City Council will consider both the zone change and conditional use permit on the Monday, February 26th regular council agenda. So for the agenda, you have the consent agenda, which has excusal of absences for a variety of commissioners from January 16th, approval of meeting minutes from January 16th, and then one preliminary plat. This is for Modern Green Ivy Townhomes that is within the Ivy District development. And then going on to new business, we have a final plat for the Pearland Row houses and bungalows that are in Old Town. We've got a variance for the 3-to-1 lot depth to width ratio for property at 5903 Broadway. Then we've got a zone change from R2 to NS for 3801 Liberty Drive, and then a conditional use permit for a studio for learning within the BP 288 district at 2743 Smith Ranch Road. So with that, I'll pass back to you to handle the consent.
Okay, that moves us to consent agenda. Can I have a motion for approval on consent agenda?
Commissioner Fuertes make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. All right. Seeing no discussion, call for the vote. Everybody in favor, raise your right hand. 4-0. Okay. Lawrence, do we need to go through the consideration of the excused absences and all that, or is that all in the consent agenda?
No, sir, that was all part of the consent agenda. There's
Okay.
no, we're moving on to item 6.1.
Item C? No.
6.1 under new business.
Okay. Items removed from consent agenda being none, that leaves us to new business. Consideration of possible action plat 24-07, final plat of Pearland Row House and Bungalows. A request by Patrick Lane, LJA Engineering, on behalf of Sullivan Brothers Builders, LTD owner, to approve the final plat of Pearland Row Houses and Bungalows, creating 58 lots and 3 blocks described. General location, south of Broadway Street, west of Galveston Avenue. Can I have a motion and a second for approval?
So moved.
Commissioner Dugas, second.
All right, that brings us to staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Florence Buaku. Florence, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. This final plat is for approval of Pearland Row Houses and Bungalows, and is to create 58 lots. The lots vary in size, and this is part of the Old Town Site Plan development, which was approved, I believe, a couple of years ago. Staff has reviewed this for conformity with city codes and has determined that it does meet all the relevant codes. The property is part of a planned development. It is in the Old Town district, and it's mostly surrounded by the Old Town District and then also the General Business District to the east. The future land use designates the properties as part of the village district. The intent is to develop row houses, and that is in line with the future land use designation of the site. So this is a view of the proposed final plat. The preliminary plat was approved in December of 2023. And there have been a few changes since then because there were conditions that were put on that preliminary plat. So the applicant has made changes to the final plat to satisfy the conditions of the preliminary plat. So I'm just going to highlight a few of them. The streetlights have been added to the plat, and then a couple of water meter easements have been added to the plat as well as a right-of-way dedication along Walnut Street has been added to the final plat. Staff has reviewed this based on the criteria outlined in the UDC and has determined that it meets all the criteria. It meets the plan development requirements as well as the approved preliminary plat. And so based on that, staff is recommending approval of the final plat. Thank you. That concludes staff report.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Do you have a presentation, or are you just here for? Okay. Okay, so that takes us on to persons wishing to speak for or against this item. Second call for person wishing to speak for or against this item. The consideration for the Sullivan Brothers in Old Town site, the plat. It's number one.
Number one on the agenda, it's plat number 24-07.
Yeah.
Mr. Vrazel, that's not the one, Mr. Vrazel? That's not the one you signed up for. This is the one you signed up for a zone change, is that correct? I'm sorry. He signed up for a different item.
Okay. All right. All right. Third and final time. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this item? All right. Seeing none, that opens it up for the staff and commission discussion. Anybody have anything? I think we've seen this quite a few times, and I, for one, I'm glad to see it finally get to this stage. So, being that we don't have any, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Carries 4-0. All right, that moves us on to the next one. Second for consideration and possible actions. Variance 23-21, variance from the maximum 3.1 3-to-1 lot depth to lot width ratio in the general commercial GC district. A request by Donna Eccles of ProServe, the applicant on behalf of Fast and Loud LLC and Horizon Outdoor Construction Inc., owners for approval of a variance permitted in the section 2.6.1.1B1 of the Unified Development Code, ordinance number 2000-T, from section 3.2.14.2C to allow the creation of two lots, one of which exceeds the maximum 3-to-1 lot depth to a lot width ratio in the minor plat of Horizon Outdoor Fast and Loud subdivision, described as location 5903 Broadway. That brings us to staff report.
We'll look for a motion in a second first, sir.
Yeah, I always forget that. Can I call for Motion for approval and a second, please.
Motion for approval.
Commissioner Dugas, second.
All right, now it brings us to staff report.
Once again, Florence, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. This variance is from the maximum 3-to-1 lot depth to width ratio. This is for a property with a lot depth of 770 feet and a lot width of about 160 feet. And so it yields a ratio of 4.82 to 1, which exceeds the 3-to-1 maximum ratio. And the intent is to develop this for commercial uses. And there are currently existing structures on the property. It's being used for commercial purposes. So the property is zoned general commercial. It's surrounded by general commercial on all sides except for the northern portion where it's surrounded by it abuts single family residential 2 zoning. And the zoning designation of the site is consistent with the proposed use of the site. The future land use designates the property as mostly business commercial, which supports the commercial use. And then the northern portion of the site is designated as suburban residential, which is not consistent with the use, but the zoning that support the use. So this is the proposed plat, and this variance is for lot 2, which is the skinny long lot. Staff has reviewed this according to the criteria established in the UDC. The variance meets all the criteria except for the fact that because this is a property that is being subdivided, the variance is not necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the petitioner, and it's also a hardship that is caused by the petitioner, but it generally meets the lot requirements as well as all the variance criteria. And so based on that, staff is recommending approval of the requested variance because it meets the zoning district requirements for the general commercial district, and staff does not anticipate any negative impact on existing properties and uses. And that concludes staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. Is the applicant present?
So I did get a call from the applicant that they will not be able to make it tonight.
Okay, that moves it on to persons wishing to speak for or against this item 2. Second call for anyone wishing to speak for or against item 2. Third and last time, anyone wishing to speak for or against item 2. Seeing none, that leaves it to open it up for the commissioners. Anyone wishing to speak for or against?
Just real briefly, I think this also, and I don't mean to say also because it's a new comment. I know I've said this before. I just hope that maybe during our UDC changes, or if I could recommend that these 3-to-1 lot depth, if they could be handled at the staff level, and then if it's a no and the applicant wishes, they could then come to the Planning and Zoning Commission for perhaps a change or a second look. But since I've been back, I think we've had probably a dozen of these 3-to-1s, and I know it's a lot of staff time, and I think staff has other things they could be working on. And so perhaps it just saves some time and efforts, and we've approved every one of them, so seems it could be handled at the staff level. So
I I agree with Commissioner Fortes. I guess my question or inquiry would be, is there something in the UDC that would prevent that? Or is it, to his point, a scenario to, as long as there isn't a proposal that this not be approved, then it would need to make it to us? But if not, would there be anything hindering that?
Yes, ma'am, there may be. So I believe there has been one that has actually been denied, and it became an issue that because the condition attached was so that the fire code, to limit development on it so that the fire department could access the back of the department because it was so long and thin, or that nothing would be built behind it that the fire department would have to access, was the condition on it to address one of the issues that come up when you create a long, narrow lot. But setting that issue aside, because it is a variance to a standard, staff doesn't have the ability to put the notices out and receive public comment from a variance request. And a variance always requires public input prior to an approval. So when we have the discussion, I'm sorry, don't mean to get too close there. When we have the discussion on the UDC and any proposed revisions, I would imagine that at that time, staff would say, this is going to be something that we would have to consider at that time. How often do you hear public comment about these? Well, that's a different issue, right? But that's why staff is always going to say, for a variance, there has to be a public hearing. For a public hearing, we're going to have to put it on an agenda, whether staff is supportive of or in opposition to.
And perhaps the rule itself needs to be questioned or rewritten to where it's for the fire apparatus.
So it allows it in the majority of instances. That's what we would look for. Allow it in the majority of instances, unless, and then once you get to the unless, that's when it becomes a variance application. Yep.
Okay, well,
None of those things were presented in this particular one, though. So just
absolutely.
we made the call for the public because of the variance. You heard.
I just wish that they would have bothered to show up. I know they don't have to, but as far as I'm concerned, they ain't got a dog in the hunt until they show up here. So,
Just to be fair to the applicant, I do believe that they had some issue come up that kept them from being here. So I've worked with this surveyor and this property owner, and they are invested in developing the property.
All righty. All right. Well, being that that we're through with anybody else on discussion? Al? Okay. Then I'm going to call for the vote. Everybody in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. 4-0. Approval. Okay, that brings us to consideration and possible action, zone change application. Public hearing, a request by Mona Malone, applicant on behalf of JKM 5 Liberty LLC, owner, for approval and zone change for 6.309 acres of land from single family residential -2 R2 district to neighborhood services NS district, located at 3801 Liberty Drive, Pearland, Texas. Can I have a motion for approval in a second?
Motion for approval, Commissioner Dugas.
Commissioner Ford is second.
All right. Having that, I'll turn it over to staff for report.
Thank you, Chair. Let me introduce Patrick Bauer. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Excuse me. Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. As mentioned, the request before you tonight is for a zone change from the R2 Single Family Residential 2 District to the NS Neighborhood Service District on approximately 6.309 acres of land. And the future land use of the property is the medium density residential designation. And to date, staff had not received any written comments or phone calls in favor or against the request. So as mentioned, the zoning of the property, the current zoning of the property is the R2 zoning, and it's predominantly surrounded by that zoning to the north, east, west, and for a portion of the south. And then a portion to the south is also the R1 single-family residential 1 zoning district. And so as mentioned, the designation of the property is the medium density residential future land use designation. And then the properties to the north and northwest, northeast are all that medium density residential designation, with some property to the south being the low density residential. And there's some park designation to the west. And also to the south, there's some open space designation. And kind of looking at the uses surrounding the property, we see single family detached to the generally the north, northeast, and to the east, with some to the south as well. There's a city park to the west. There's a creek, which is Mary's Creek, to the south, and then a portion of undeveloped land to the west. A little bit of history on the property. The subject property was annexed into the city in 1960. The property was then developed in 1977 with the 2 buildings that are existing today that were occupied by a school. Coming a little more to today, a conditional use permit was approved in 2011 by City Council for an institution of religious, educational, or philanthropic nature use to occupy the site, and the property is currently not platted. And here we get a view of the subject property today. These are the 2 buildings that are currently sit on the site and are occupied by the institution of philanthropic or religious use. And so looking at some of the review criteria, in terms of the comprehensive plan and the future land use designation, as mentioned, the property has a designation of medium density residential. And that is not compatible with, or the NS zoning is not compatible with that designation, that future land use designation. And in terms of the thoroughfare plan, Liberty Drive is designated as a major collector with sufficient width. In terms of the Unified Development Code, the property is currently developed, and if any future improvements are made to the site, it will be subject to any UDC requirements such as landscaping or parking. And in terms of utilities, the subject property does have access to utilities currently. And so looking at the review criteria or approval criteria for a zone change, staff found that the request met 2 of the 4 criteria, and specifically criteria 1 pertains to the designation, the future land use designation of the site, which, as mentioned, is not the NS zoning is not compatible with. And in terms of the second, it's whether the use is permitted by the proposed zone change and the standards applicable to such uses will be appropriate in the immediate area of the land to be reclassified. And so, you go to the next slide, Martin. Looking at the staff analysis, while the proposed zone change to a non-residential zoning kind of allows for the subject property to act as a transition zone between the more intense city park to the west that people more frequent and the less intense single-family residence to the north and east, while the NS district may be appropriate for the uses that are currently on the site, such as the institution of philanthropic nature, the continued life of the building and the future users currently are unknown. And thus it questions whether the NS district and the allowed uses within that are suitable. And so a lesser zoning may be more suitable for the continued life of the building, and especially with the compatibility with adjacent neighbors. And so while staff is not strongly opposed to the request of NS, we are unable to fully recommend approval of the NS district, and staff would be in favor and recommend approval of a less intense zoning district, such as the OP, which is the office and professional zoning district for the subject property. So therefore, staff recommends approval of the office and professional district with the following condition: that prior to second reading of the proposed ordinance by City Council, the property owner shall provide evidence or proof that all taxes and obligations have been paid regarding the subject property. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? State your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Mona Malone, and I am representing the property owner, Jerome Carroll. We are applying for a zone change at staff's direction. They have been great guiding us through this. It has been a little bit confusing. The uses that are currently on the property are planned to continue. They are not looking to change the footprint of the property or anything like that. What they are looking to do, there is currently an adult daycare. There is another daycare that's on the property. And now there is a third daycare that is actually wanting to go in on the second floor of the larger gymnasium type building. In order to allow multiple users, we were told that we needed the zone change. And then in addition to that, it sounds like the key aspect of it is those uses that have been on the property thus far have been of a nonprofit nature. And so that's where the conditional use permit came in. He would like to continue those nonprofit businesses, but he would also, since the property is going to be built out for all daycares, he would like to not limit himself to only not-for-profit tenants in the future. It already is going to be limiting because it's built out as a daycare, and then on top of that, to find daycares that are not for profit. So he wants to, of course, beautify the property, maintain it. We're not looking to change any zoning or footprint, I should say. The reason for the zone change is to bring things into compliance with for what's there, and then what he would like to propose. The neighborhood services, we felt like was a good fit. That is a zoning category that is meant to serve the surrounding neighborhoods. Everything is for indoor, no outdoor storage, nothing intrusive. You couldn't do a used car lot or something to where you would have a lot of outdoor storage, things like that. Everything would be within the structures themselves, except playgrounds, of course. Children are going to have the playgrounds. But this is the first step in going the correct direction to get the daycares in there, to get everything brought up to code, and then not limit the uses. But the only plan at this point is for daycare. And again, the owner is here if you have any additional questions for us.
Okay, thank you. Y'all can go ahead and sit down. We can't dialogue right now, but we'll have some questions for you, I'm sure. Okay, that brings us to the persons who wish to speak for or against, and we have one, Mr. James Roselle. Yes, sir. Go to the podium and state your name and address, please.
My name is James Razzle, 2504 Stacy Drive. It's right across, almost across the street from this property. And I would like to say that I oppose any changes. And the application zone 2316, I oppose. And let's see what else we got here. The application for Mona Malone to change rezone the property to allow for institution of religious education or philanthropic nature, use by right to allow for a conditional use permit cup to be submitted for a child daycare center business on the property. Let's see. I request that all this remains single family residential -2 R2 district. And that's what I oppose, and that's what I would like to see.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Go to the podium and state your name and address. And if you do not mind, fill out a form and give it to our young lady on the end down here.
I'm Richard Malish. I live at 2418 Parkview. My backyard is at the back end of their property. And I can't be for or against this because I'm not sure what all this residential to and all that means. The OS kind of sounds a little bit better. My fear is the future. When if it's just going to be a adult daycare kind of thing, and this is a technicality to make that happen, then I'm fine with it. The outside of that, and I'm kind of looking for y'all as protecting the citizens, and I think that's what you're here for. Is the traffic on Liberty? That part of it is the blacktop road, and people already use Parkview to bypass the traffic from the Gringos area around. So in the afternoons, we already have some traffic issues. The school's coming in right there at Liberty and Broadway, and that's going to cause some more traffic issues when that opens up. So, I don't know if y'all are looking at expanding Liberty, widening it, making it a little bit better through the blacktop part of it there, where there's rural ditches. It's a rural type road to John Lizer back in the back. Not real sure what's, those kind of considerations in that developing it. If they're not, and a question I have for y'all is, if they're going to expand, let's say put more buildings on the property, then they have to come back to y'all, right, and get permits for that and kind of rezone or not?
Sir, we can't dialogue with you, but we can ask that question in a little bit. So it will be answered, but.
Okay, that's my questions are, if these kind of ensure a daycare type, office type business, then I'm fine with it. But if it doesn't kind of protect us in the neighborhood right there from that happening, I mean, it's always been a school. It was a school since '77. The neighborhood came in, I think, right after that school, right around there. I know it don't look like it, but I've been here since, I've been in Pearland since '70. And so kind of seen this area, seen a few changes go on. And, anyway, that's my concerns is I got, more concerns than I do, opposition or against. It's going to be a business. There's a business there. I'm just not sure, how much. I don't want it expanded so much that just about anything could go in there. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm kind of looking for y'all to make those decisions correctly. I don't like vacant buildings either. And I applaud, the developer for coming in here and trying to upgrade it, make it nicer. But by the same token, we need to kind of.
Okay, understand. All right. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? Sir, we're going to probably get back to y'all because we got some questions that we're going to ask. And that's when we can talk to y'all. Right now, isn't that right, Lawrence, as far as them going back up to the podium?
That would have been prior to, theoretically, you're the applicant. All of your applicant presentation should have been during the applicant presentation. So, but I know that the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to call you up to ask a few questions. And I think that we'll be able to hear what you have to say in response to those, especially because their questions are going to be in response to the citizens' comments.
Yes. All right. For the second time, anyone wishing to speak for or against? Third and final time, anyone wishing to speak for or against? That opens it up for commission's discussion. Anybody? We'll kick it off.
Just a general question to staff. To start off with, neighborhood services is what the applicant applied for. Staff has thought that, or staff believes that office and professional district may be more appropriate. I guess I'm wondering which uses in neighborhood services are giving you heartburn, or that you prefer the office professional use instead of neighborhood services. And I think it also falls in line with what the second gentleman stated or questioned as well.
Right. So, provided within y'all's packet tonight were the handouts that we normally have for zone changes. These are publicly available online, just for everyone else in the audience, that are tied to our interactive map and discuss what is allowed in each zoning district. And you have both the neighborhood services and the office professional pages in front of you. The big difference in between neighborhood services and office professional is the availability for cooking and delivery of food. Neighborhood services allows preparation of food, whereas office professional generally limits it to more office type uses and a limited selection of retail that are really geared towards being non-intrusive on nearly every level.
I appreciate the comments from the citizens with the concerns that they have regarding this possible zone change. What I will start by saying is that my concern with the zone change is not the intent of the applicant, but that we are zone changing the dirt. So no matter what the intent is moving forward for future uses, once we have zoned the dirt, you are entitled to do whatever that zoning entails. So that is my concern concerning the zone change, that yes, you could have intentions for adult daycare and for multiple levels, and that's the intent, but you don't have to be held to that once the dirt is zone change. So that is my concern for that. I now understand the main difference concerning the office professional and the neighborhood services. With the preparation of food, and I understand for an adult daycare, it would be ideal to be able to prepare that food. But where I stand right now, I'm unwilling to zone this, knowing that the other uses that could occur for this if I change the zoning of the dirt.
Commissioner Boswell, if I can interrupt real quick. So you could cook inside and provide meals to the people that are inside the building.
Okay.
It's when you're cooking food and then offering it out for sale to the citizenry. That's more like a restaurant. A restaurant or food preparation for sale and consumption offsite is the primary difference between the neighborhood services and office professional. So if you are in an office and you want to cook your lunch there, you can open up the microwave and cook your lunch there, or you can turn on the stove and cook your food there. But that's not sale out to the public. So no part of what I was intending to say and trying to convey was limiting the daycare from being able to cook for patrons of that daycare.
Okay.
it's more opening it up to having a
Public
cooking
consumption
stand
of the
there,
food.
or having some food vendor or person that is cooking for the general public.
Okay. And so would they be able to proceed with the adult daycare with the proposed zoning of the OP?
Yes.
Okay. Did the application change to OP, or now is that something that we could suggest, saying that although we might not be open, and I'll speak for myself, I might not be open to neighborhood services, I am open to staff proposal for OP, because this would allow the intended use for the applicant along with the preparation of food, as long as it's not for the sale of the public.
Right. Before I give a direct answer on that, just as a recursor on zone changes, because it's been quite a while since we had a zone change, we do take the applicant's proposal to staff or to city council first. So the first reading will be a zone change from R2 to NS to be heard by city council. Council will hear staff's presentation and the recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then take action on that. If council agrees to either go to neighborhood services or to office professional, then that will be what goes on to the second reading of the ordinance.
Okay.
And whether or not, and I would fully, because we do provide a draft set of minutes about this meeting, I would strongly recommend that each of you, detail out your reasoning, or if I would hate to put council in a position where they have to have a supermajority on a recommendation just because we weren't able to communicate the desires of the P&Z efficiently before the vote. So if you're looking at going to OP, let's all, I would recommend and hope that we can all coalesce on OP rather than having a split vote to go to some NS or some OP. But know that because we do have 4 members tonight, it's getting to that vote is more difficult.
Okay, can I have the applicant go back up to the podium?
Sorry, we were a little surprised by the office professional zoning recommendation. As long as the uses that, they are looking for are allowed, then I believe the applicant would be fine to proceed with that. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Jerome Karam. He is a major developer in our area. He's bought the Mainland Mall, the Greyhound Park, all of those type things. He's really good about going in, taking these buildings that are a little more of an eyesore, maybe not being used any longer, and revamping those structures to where they are bringing those back active into the community, getting everything back up and running, collecting those tax dollars, things like that, to where the city and the community are going to profit from what's going on there. So again, we're not doing anything to change the footprint of the property at this point.
Okay, that was one of the questions
Yes.
that some of the citizens had. That so y'all don't plan on expanding any of the buildings? You're going to leave them as is, except for the facades of the building. Y'all may go in there and change the elevations as far as what they look like.
That's correct. My name is Jerome Karam. Thank y'all for allowing me to speak. So I bought the building, as the gentleman said. It was a daycare. Before I bought the building, we bought it as a daycare. We've since spent a ton of money. We've never heard any issues from the city. We were permitted. I spent a fortune renovating the one-story building, brought in a daycare there, upbringing school there. We now the upstairs has been vacant for 25 years or so. And what I want to do is I want to spend money on it, bring it up, and then we'll have another daycare that has 7 current daycares in the Galveston County and Brazoria County area. And we're not going to change we're going to improve the outside, probably add an elevator, but I don't have any intention of adding any other commercial buildings. It was daycare before I bought it. I'm continuing daycare. That's it. And as far as it being OP, if OP allows this, then I would have gone with it in the first place, but we were told to go with the NS. But either one, as long as it allows me to continue to improve the building, then that's what our wishes are.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else has any questions for him?
I just had one quick question. So the second floor, it's not built out yet, right?
Mr. Karam, would you please go back to the microphone? Thank you.
So what you mean by built out, it's not currently leased. It's never been currently leased as far as I understand. And it's just an empty building gathering dust, and we're going to bring it up to standards and to code.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And to ensure that I understand you correctly, because I think we have a good compromise here, what staff had recommended. You're okay with the OP zoning as long as you can do the daycare under OP.
So I'm an attorney, so I want to be real careful because I've hired experts and I've trusted the staff to guide us correctly. And I haven't really studied this because I had no idea that there was going to be any issue. I thought everyone would welcome me like they do in all the other cities when I come in and take these big old empty buildings that no one's willing to spend millions of dollars on. So as long as I don't fall off a ledge and they say, aha, we got you, you're OP, so you got to kick out upbringing and get sued, and you got to kick out the daycare. So I haven't studied the zoning, but as long as those two are allowed to stay and we're able to continue with a daycare upstairs, then yes, sir, it's irrelevant because it's 8 acres. I'm not intending on adding to the footprint. I'm not intending on adding another commercial building. We're right by that beautiful park, and we want to obviously give the children a place to play and be safe, of course. So that's what our wishes are.
And staff, they can get there with the OP?
So the philanthropic uses, there's a long
Philanthropic uses that are currently in the buildings fall under the special use permit or specific use permit that was granted in 1989. So that's why they are there now under those ones. But the proposed new building with whatever type of childcare it
Not
is,
new
daycare,
building, the top
the
floor.
proposed top floor, the new use, that does not fall under that exception or under that special use permit because it is not a philanthropic use. And that's where that distinction came in. So when staff learned of that's when they said, oh, no, we need to do something different.
And to carry on with that, both the OP and NS districts allow a conditional use permit to be applied for and further approved by City Council for the business child daycare center.
So he wouldn't have to come in for the existing ones because they would still fit within that philanthropic use.
Well, the philanthropic uses become a by right issue when the zoning becomes either OP or NS.
So it would only be for the new use, and again, that new use is a daycare that would be for profit, because that one is not covered by the prior permit that was approved in 1989. So I do want to go back to one of Commissioner Boswell's questions, which is what's the difference between the NS and OP? And while Martin has said that the primary thing is the ability to provide food in the area, I would say that if you look at the sheets and you compare by right, if it does go to NS versus OP, some of the things that are allowed by right in the NS use would be cabinet business. I don't think anybody has any intention, but that doesn't mean it couldn't happen. The cafeteria, which I think kind of goes to what Martin was talking about, you could put a cafeteria there. And then the ones that tend to create the type of density or traffic issues or concerns that adjacent neighborhoods would have might include a convenience store without a gas station being able to be on the site. I don't think people have a lot of traffic at jewelry stores. However, pet care, whether that be indoor or animal shops, pet shops, pet care for sure. The indoor pet kennels tend to have some traffic that sometimes generates concerns from the community, because even though it is indoor pet kennels, animals have to go outside sometime, and sometimes that causes noise. And then the recreation center, whether that be private or for-profit, rec centers tend to generate traffic depending on, I guess, how successful they are. So those are the ones that are allowed by right in NS that I didn't see on the OP. However, as Martin indicated, the adult daycare and child daycare are both allowed with the CUP, and that would happen whether it be in NS or in OP.
So essentially, in summary, if we went with office and professional, I think that helps the citizens that spoke, that were concerned that it would be a use that might be a little more intense than they desired. If we go with OP, I think those uses, office and professional, those uses are more palatable inside of a community, just outside of the community where the residents live. And I believe that, just to make sure I'm clear, either one, neighborhood services or office and professional, the applicant would still need to come back, or will still need to come back for the child care use.
Correct.
Okay. Well, if
Come back to y'all or come back to the city council?
for us as a CUP, the planning and zoning hears that first, and then it does go to council after that for a first and second reading type, or they'll still debate it and they still have control over it. They can override us, I believe. Is that with the supermajority? They don't need a supermajority with CUPs anymore.
Are we going to have to come back here anyway?
From my experience, in doing this-
CUPs are done in just one reading. That would be the only thing that I would say different about it. So
Thank you.
traditionally, a CUP could be resolved within, I think we say 45 days.
Yep.
It still provides notice to the public. It comes in front of planning and zoning, and then it goes in front of city council for one reading.
Yes, sir. So even if you were successful getting NS tonight and went through the council, you still would have to go back through that process. And
Okay, thank you.
I think you can probably start that ball rolling sooner than later. Okay. Well, if you'd consider it a compromise, I sure do consider it a compromise, and I hope we can get there. Now, I don't know procedurally what we need to do, and that's between you and Daryl, so I'll shut up.
So the motion was to approve the zone change as it was presented. So what we would look for, if that's what planning and zoning wanted to do, a motion to amend and approve this as a OP, which is a less intent zoning category than the NS.
Commissioner Dugas, you were the one who originally made the motion.
I think anybody can say, I move to amend, and let's take a vote on that first to see if we're all on the same page.
All right. I thank you. I think got everybody's questions answered and stuff. We appreciate y'all coming up there and you know, you'd made the one statement that I wanted you to I want to make clear. We're zoning dirt. Has nothing to do with you. It's the dirt that we're doing. If you were to sell this tomorrow after we make these zone changes, we're held to this. Somebody less ethical could come in there and do whatever they wanted to once we make the decision. So that's the reason why we got the little bit of heartburn. So, all right. Do I have anybody wishing to make an amendment?
Please correct me if I don't state this correctly, but I'd like to make a motion that we amend the current motion to office and professional use OP district, not use, rather than the neighborhood services district that we made the original motion for.
Commissioner Dugas, second.
Yes, sir. We'll vote on that first.
Okay, any discussion on it? Okay, I call for the vote. Everybody wishing to vote for what Henry said, the amendment, show by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign, carries 4-0. Now can we go to
Yes, sir. You now have
approval?
an amended motion on the floor, and you're looking for a vote on that amended motion. So a yes vote will be a recommendation of OP district for this application.
Okay. All right, now I'm calling for the vote for the amended motion. Everybody in favor, raise your right hand. Those opposed, same sign. 4-0 carries. And I hope that the citizens are happy with this. So I think that ought to relieve some of y'all's anxiety as far as what's gonna happen. So I drive by there quite often, and I'm glad to see that somebody's gonna do something with that and renovate some of that, make it look a little bit better. All right, that takes us on to consideration of and possible action, conditional use permit application CUP 24-01, a request of Zarina O. Shocker, applicant on behalf of Pearland Office Center LLC, owner, for approval of conditional use permit CUP for a studio and learning center for fine and performing arts within the business park -288. BP-288 district on approximately 30.715 acres of land. Locations 2743 Smith Ranch Road, Unit 1501, Pearland, Texas. Can I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Commissioner Dugas, second.
All right, seeing that, can I turn it over to staff report?
Thank you, Chair. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. So the request before you specifically is for a conditional use permit to allow a music studio for learning on the property at 2743 Smith Ranch Road. And the suite space that they're going into is approximately 1,200 square feet. The future land use of the property is the 288 Gateway designation. And to date, staff has not received any comments in favor or against the request. So as mentioned, the subject property is within the Business Park 288 zoning district. That same zoning is on properties to the south and to the north. And there's some single-family residential 3 zoning to the east and to the north as well. And then the properties to the west and a portion of the south are outside of the city limits in the extraterritorial jurisdiction. And looking at the designation for the properties, you can see most of the properties around this area are the 288 Gateway, as they are close to the 288 corridor. And then the properties to the east are the medium density residential designation. And so looking at the surrounding uses, we see some undeveloped land to the north of the property, detention that actually serves the site to the south, some single family residential to the east, and then within the ETJ, there's a shopping center and an office to the south. So a little bit of history on the property. It was originally annexed into the city in 1998. The property was then platted more recently in 2018. And as you can see from the aerials, the construction of an office park began in 2019, is still in progress today. And so here we get a look at the actual lease space where the proposed music studio would go into. And you can see the call out is, this is about the approximate location. It's kind of in the middle of the office park, and that is the suite space for 1501. And so here's just another look at, they're kind of all separate buildings within this office park, and they all have 4 lease spaces within a building, and you can see the location of where the music studio would be going in this lease, or this building. And so looking at the review criteria, staff found that the request met the 288 gateway designation as it's kind of a service or retail use in essence that is compatible with the designation, provides a service. And in terms of Smith Ranch Road is a secondary thoroughfare, which is to be widened. In terms of the alterations or compliance with the UDC, any interior alterations of a tenant does not require actual UDC improvement triggers, but require compliance if anything's changed for building code. And then the subject property has access to city utilities. And in terms of the approval criteria for a conditional use permit, staff found that the request met all 7 of the approval criteria for a CUP. And so the proposed use meets the established criteria for approval of a CUP. Additionally, the proposed use is consistent, as mentioned, with the comprehensive plan, that future land use designation, as well as the thoroughfare plan and future plans for Smith Ranch Road. And so therefore, staff recommends approval of the requested conditional use permit for a music studio on the site. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you, sir. Is the applicant present? You wish presentation? All right. State your name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Sarina Olivia Shocker. The address is 2743 Smith Ranch Road, Unit 1501, Pearland, Texas, 77584. I would like to start by introducing myself as a music educator and a classical singer. I went to school for specifically opera performance and music education. I then went directly to the school district and I became a, kindergarten, it's K to 12 music director. And from there, I realized that it was a thirst from the parents and the community to understand how music impacts the learning abilities of the child. Because of that, I decided to start teaching privately along with my working with the school district. And I realized I couldn't do both. I had a bigger impact if I worked one-on-one with families, and it was very beneficial. Especially with students that had disabilities, I was able to help them. If they could see a pattern in a music phrase, they could then correlate that into reading or a language. Because of that, I then started working with music therapies around the city, and I decided to make my own music studio called Compassion Music Studio, following those principles. When I moved to Houston, I opened up the same services to the community, and I was very welcomed in Houston. I started by going to the families' homes, and then I realized that I really needed a place. So then I rented a co-working office space, and it's a beautiful space. I loved it, and as I started growing, my family grew as well. So I bought a house here in Pearland, and I kept commuting all the way over there. And then at the end of the performance, one of the music parties, events that I had, I realized that a lot of the families that were commuting to Houston were from Pearland as well. So I got inspired and decided to put all of my savings into finding a location for my studio. And I found these. I would like to share. I have the video on this laptop that is connected. Is there anything I need to click for it to come up? Oh, thank you very much. I found this, and I would like to show. This is from their website. I will skip a little bit just for you to see the inside. It is perfect because it has an opening space for families to come in. This is not the actual location. It's just it's the same format as the one that I purchased. When I toured it, they told me It was a perfect space because of all the therapies around it and the surrounding buildings. And it has comfort for families to come in and wait or participate as they wish. And there's perfect amount of space for me to teach. And I would like to clarify that it is just me as an educator there. Here. Oh, businesses surrounding that area, there are ABA therapies, which are support for families that are following a diagnosis of autism. There are clinics, physical therapies, family services around it. So I think I will have the support of them. And as I applied for the certificate of occupancy, I was then guided into the CUP process, which I support because I understand the need to take care of the city. So I would like to share also what I do, just to clarify of exactly what I do, because if I were to hear a music studio, it could be confusing of what it's offered. And I like to provide very one-on-one service or in a group setting to teach through play. And it's a very quiet environment, doing it while we play. My office in Houston had a glass wall. In 5 years, I never had any noise complaints there. If anything, I had all the support of the lawyer who worked next to me and the pastor that worked next to me. With 4 keyboards is the only equipment I use. The children use headphones because I like to accommodate low noise level. To teach rhythm, I use basic things that they use as a day-to-day basis. These are children for 0 to 4-year-old classes where really the parent is the student. The performances are very cozy. I call them parties, and I like to keep them very small because those are the students participating and their siblings. We then review everything that we learn through the material. Those were the students that participated only. We do movement activities to reinforce. And then they get an opportunity to play a solo with a keyboard to minimize the sound, to respect everybody's noise preferences. And of course, there's the goal of teaching the students to use their voice without amplified sound, for them to breathe correctly and have a healthy voice. That mic, it was all for show. And then this is a beautiful part. The parents get to participate at the end of each party. I like to show that, teach the parents to be kind to their own children and have realistic expectations when learning a new skill. And they come to the lesson and I teach them, and it's a beautiful moment that we all celebrate together. The thing that I would like to add to my studio is this licensing that I have. It's called Music Together. And it's a group class where I teach moms and dads and grandparents how to play with their children through music for them to communicate efficiently. I've had instances where children are nonverbal and they only speak during music class, during those 45 minutes. And those are the tools that parents use to communicate during that week until they come back again the next week. It's such a beautiful experience and honor really that I have to share this with the families, and I want to bring it to Pearland. I closed it in Houston with the thought that it would be a smooth transition. Well, I estimated a few months of transition for me to have everything as needed, and I hope everything goes smoothly for me to bring it to the city. Thank you. I'm open to any questions later.
Thank you. Well, we've got a few more things to do first. So, all right. Persons wishing to speak for or against this item. Calling for second time, people wishing to speak for or against item 4 of new business. Third and last time, people wishing to speak for or against this item. Seeing none, that opens it up to commission. Anybody want to say anything?
I think this is a no-brainer for us. I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate you wanting to open your business in Pearland. So best of luck to you.
I love everything about this. I think it's out of the box. I think it's innovative. I think that I haven't seen anything like this in Pearland. So, echoing the sentiments of Commissioner Fortes, I wish you the best of luck, and I don't have any objections to this.
Yeah, I echo both of them as well. I think it's very impressive what you're doing, and I think it's amazing the type of support that you've already built. So I'm excited to see it grow and grow. Thank you.
Have the next one for adults.
That's why I was thinking, say, can you teach me to sing? But welcome. That's all I'm going to say, and we're going to call for a vote. All those in favor, signal by raising your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Carries 4-0. All right, that brings us to discussion items. City Council update report.
I will keep this ultra brief. The last time we met was on January 16th, and there were no items on the previous city council meeting that came out of y'all's discussions.
Okay, what about commissioner activity report?
If I could just ask one thing. Well, first off, welcome back to Miss Ashley Boswell, our commissioner. And I didn't wear purple for the occasion, and I'm sorry about that. One thing that I had, and I didn't want to bring it off of our consent agenda, but the modern green ivy. I guess I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission when it was the president's heads before it was modern green, and modern green was in good standing, and then not so much, and then came back and forth and back and forth. I recall the multifamily portions, or compact residential, if we want to say that in today's world verbiage, that it was going to be phased in. Has that happened? Or I know they came back when I was on the 5-year hiatus. Does anybody know that?
To say, there'll be an upcoming issue for planning and zoning to consider on that item. And in light of that, we probably don't want to talk about it today and leave somebody to think that we were talking about that without it being posted. But
Understand.
you're going to get an update in the form of you even getting to approve an action real soon.
I will wait patiently then. No problem. Thank you.
Okay, we've got a meeting that's a joint meeting next Monday, February the 12th at 5 p.m. Is everybody going to be able to make that? Okay, we'll make some phone calls. I apologize the last meeting that we were supposed to have, but jury duty trumps P&Z. So I wasn't able to make it. The next P&Z regular meeting is on February the 19th. That is President's Day, and we're going to be here, right?
I am not a president. It is not my day. I will be here.
Well, I was at one time. All right, I'm
It
gonna
is
be
not
here
a city
too.
holiday.
All right, good. So only the county gets off on that, I guess. That being said, I'm going to close this meeting at 7:49.